Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 36, the first of our new Saturday series where we're following the Red Roses as they look to defend their World Cup from 3 years ago. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, thanks for joining us once again. We're going to be doing a series, a special sort of Saturday series, a feature for the Ladies World Cup. The England women, or the Red Roses as they're known, are defending their title that they won 3 years ago in Ireland over the course of the next few weeks. And we thought, what better opportunity to get to know them, get to know the team, get to know a little bit more about women's rugby, because we don't know a huge amount about it. And hopefully you guys can join us and learn a little bit more about it too. I'm joined, of course, by Dan. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. How are you? How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been a good week. Just busy, of course. It's that time of year. I'm in travel, so it's always a busy time in the summer. But yeah, it's been good. Always time to fit in a couple of England Rugby Pod episodes, though. So
glad to hear it. And I managed to fit in time to watch our women play as well, which I really enjoyed, actually.
Yeah, well, it's going to be good, I think, to just have that opportunity to just find out a little bit more. I mean, I can't speak for all of our listeners, but if they're anything like us, they probably are, of course, aware of it, but probably don't know a huge amount about the women's setup and the women's side. So we thought, what better opportunity than a Rugby World Cup, particularly one where the England girls, have got a really good shout at winning it, and they're defending it. Of course, they won it 3 years ago, as I mentioned. So a great opportunity to get to know them a little bit better. So. Yeah, hopefully over the course of the next sort of 3 or 4 episodes where we're focusing on them, we'll all come away from it slightly more knowledgeable going forwards, which of course what this is all about. Of course, we are following the men. We're following them towards their World Cup in 2019, but we're following England rugby in general, and of course the women are becoming a bigger and bigger part of that all the time. So it'll be really good to see how they progress through this competition.
Yeah, I've quite enjoyed actually over the years sort of watching the England women. I think one of the problems is a lot of the time when I haven't watched them, it's because I haven't been aware of it. Thankfully, it's getting publicised more and more now. But just watching them the other day, I mean, let's make no mistake here, they are professional athletes. They are in great shape. They are well drilled, and they really look for business, and it doesn't surprise me they're number one in the world. I saw the New Zealand Wales game as well, and New Zealand also look pretty strong. But our England women team are definitely someone we should follow. They do us proud. They're a really good team, and they've got some great players.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm guessing the England New Zealand is the expected final, is it?
Yeah, I believe so. Assuming our results go to plan and sort of England win their group, New Zealand win their group, which I'd imagine is likely. You never know, because both New Zealand came through Wales fairly convincingly. They've got also Canada in their group, who are ranked number 3 in the world, and who England beat in the last World Cup final. England women beat in the last World Cup final. And from England's perspective, we've beat Spain, we've got Italy, and we've got the USA, who are quite a useful team themselves. But I would fancy our women to win that group and win it reasonably convincingly, should all go to form.
Excellent. Well, we'll come on to the game itself, the game against the Spanish. But just before we do, this is probably quite a good opportunity just to sort of set the scene almost. And, we, as I said before, we don't know a huge amount about the girls. But we would like to know more. We'd like to learn more as we go. And probably a good place to start would be just to run through the squad. We'll go match day squad. I'm sure there is a wider squad, but just so that there are some names that we can start to recognise as we're following these games, and hopefully, just build up a bit more knowledge around their whole setup. So we're cracking on with that. I mean, it's Simon Middleton is the coach. It's his squad. The Red Roses, as I mentioned, he named 9 debutants for this opening game. But the squad looked like this. So up front, you had Vicky Cornborough, and Sarah Byrne were the two props, and they were held together by Heather Kerr at hooker. Abby Scott and Zoe Aldcroft were the second row. Then you had Harriet Miller-Mills, Izzy Knowles-Smith, and Captain Sarah Hunter, number 8. So they were the back row. In the backs, Leanne Riley, Katie McLean, the number 10. You then had Kay Wilson, who you may have heard of and will certainly hear more of throughout this episode, and I'm sure in the future as well, out on one wing with Lydia Thompson on the other wing. The centres, Rachel Burford and Megan Jones, who was one of the debutants. And at the back, Danielle Waterman. They also had on the bench Amy Cocaine, Rochelle Clark, Justine Lucas, Poppy Cleal, Alex Matthews, Latoya Mason, Amber Reed, and Emily Scarrett making up the 23 for the day. So that may not mean a huge amount right now, but obviously the plan is that over the course of these next 3 or 4 episodes, the names will all start to, we can start to put faces to names and start to kind of picture the squad and the team and the way that it plays, and hopefully we'll just come away from this competition knowing a lot more, and I think that makes future games more interesting. We love England, we love watching the men play, but we also know the team quite well. We know the players, so it makes it more interesting. When you watch games with players and you don't know who any of them are, it's harder to really get into it. So I think this is a good opportunity to get us into that position where we can get quite excited about future games. So that's the squad, that's the setup. But yeah, the opener, big first game. I'm not quite sure why England opened the World Cup. I guess because they're the current holders.
Possibly. There were quite a few games going on that day. I suspect because the Ireland-Australia game, which was epic, I believe it was 1917 to Ireland.
Oh, well, nice.
Possibly that was played later purely for viewing availability. I'm guessing there to an extent, but watching England open it, and like you say, there were 9 debutants because Spain were probably the least threat from that group. So there were obviously debutants for some people, just getting them used to a World Cup. So, for example, Emily Scarrett, who's on the bench, is one of our star players. I have followed them a bit, so I know a little bit about some of them. And of that 15 probably isn't the strongest 15, but actually they played well. No one seemed to tell the England women front row that they shouldn't be as mobile as they are. They were all over the place. They just,
That's what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, guys, you're meant to be front row. You're not meant to be this fit, and you're not meant to be this sort of impactful in a game. But they were. Yeah, exactly. They were brilliant. Obviously, Katie McLean at 10, who was actually the captain in the last World Cup when we won the World Cup.
Yeah.
And she had a great game. And obviously, like you said, Kay Wilson scored the 4 tries. She just, I think she's going to have a big impact in this World Cup. She just looks a natural finisher.
Yeah. Katie McLean was on her 88th cap, so she's got a lot of experience playing in this side. As you say, captain at the last World Cup, and that was 3 years ago. But yeah, 88 caps. So congratulations to her. That's a pretty good effort. You don't see many international players reaching that many caps, to be honest, these days with so much competition coming through. So that's a great shout. Spain 8th in the world. They're ranked 8th in the world right now. Obviously England number 1. I know there are less teams on the women's side. I think the World Cup is made up of possibly just 8 teams, isn't it?
I don't know. I'd need to check that, but it's certainly a lot smaller. It's not as wide as. No, there's more than 8 teams. Definitely, I think there might be.
Of course there are. How many groups are there? So there's our group. I'm not sure what group it actually is, but that's England, Italy, USA, and Spain. Obviously.
Spain, yeah.
Then you got New Zealand with Wales, Canada, and one other.
Could be Hong Kong, because
yes.
I know Hong Kong women is the first time they've played in the Women's World Cup.
Yeah, no, you're right, because it's then Japan, Australia, Ireland,
Ireland.
and France. 3 groups.
3 groups, and it goes. So there's Pool A, Pool B, Pool C, like you say, and it goes straight to semi-finals, which I assume would be the top 3 from each group and the best runner-up.
Yes.
Which will be
playoff, wasn't it? Yeah. So no, that's true. So that's so there's a good chance. Italy, Spain, probably. Is there a group of death? I don't really know enough about the other teams.
Well, Pool A is probably the group of death because you've got New Zealand, who are ranked number 2 in the world, and Canada, who are ranked number 3 in the world, and Wales. I'm not sure where they're ranked, but they've certainly got a very tough group. So
possibly Wales as a best runner-up, wasn't he?
I think they'll struggle. I think they probably will struggle because, like I say, I mean they lost. They got fairly heavily beaten by New Zealand, and they've still got Canada, who put almost 100 points on Hong Kong.
Well, that's what I mean, though. So if we assume that New Zealand and Canada go through as the top 2, do we think that Wales? Oh, I see what you're saying, because Wales probably get hammered quite badly, and therefore the scores would give someone else the better chance at being the best runner-up.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's only the top team from each group that's guaranteed progression.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense because it's semi-final. So yeah, you're looking at the top. Yes, of course. So it's tough. Yeah. Top team only. It's tough, isn't it? You've got to basically win every game. You can't. It's almost knockout from the beginning, isn't it?
It definitely is. It definitely is. And there's. I mean, England. Don't get me wrong. England. There was room for improvement on the performance, but you could tell the difference in sort of the qualities of the teams. I mean, England were a professional outfit. They looked really well trained, really well drilled. Yes, there was times where it got a bit loose, but we've all played in those games where you're clearly the better team. You're scoring tries. It's so hard to do everything sort of so disciplined because you want to try and, you want to maybe where you wouldn't have an opportunity against perhaps the sort of New Zealand, Australia, the better teams, you want to maybe try and have a bit of a run yourself. So there were times where maybe it wasn't as sort clinical. Of well drilled and clinical exactly as they'd like. But overall, I mean, you could just see the England team, they looked really good. And all of them, without fail, looked professional athletes. They were all in really good shape. They were all sort of really well drilled and just, I mean, they have been playing professionally, and it's actually.
I was going to say, I believe the England lot, they are professional. I think the New Zealanders, who are the Black Ferns, I believe, I think they are professional.
No, I believe it's just England that the only professional team, and this is it because actually after this World Cup, the funding will stop, so they will no longer be professional, which. Because what they're doing is for the women's team, they're then going to start funding the sevens team for sort of Commonwealth Games and that. But why they're stopping the funding, I must admit, I had no idea because our England women rugby is growing so quickly. They do us really proud. I just don't get why you'd stop such a successful team. And
that's we're talking central contracts though, aren't we? Because the advantage that the England team have is that their club sides remain professional, don't they?
The England women club sides aren't professional.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. So
okay, so like the Harlequins and Bristol and the likes, that they're not paying their players, or at least they're not paying them a wage.
Then they're certainly not paying them a wage, because I know there was a thing about how a lot of these women now, who for the last couple of years or whatever have been playing professional rugby, will now need to go back and get a job.
Oh, geez, that's not ideal, is it? That's likely to really shake things up, and it's very unfortunate because that's not the way we want to be heading if we're trying to grow the sport and do more with it. It seems a bit anti.
It seems counterproductive, especially massively. For such a successful team.
And given the amount of money that there is in rugby in this country.
Yeah, and how well I don't know the full thinking behind it. So it's not really fair for me to say sort of exactly it's wrong, but I don't get it. I think the women deserve full funding. The England women deserve full funding. And
it's
I think
a bit
especially
of a catch-22, isn't it? Because you need to fill the stadiums. You know, when the England men go out, they fill the stadiums 80,000 plus at Twickenham. Or was it Twickenham? Yeah, does that do 80,000? It's 90,000 maybe. I can't remember exactly how many it can take. But, you know, they'll fill the stadium and it makes a shitload of money. And I guess the trouble is that if the women's teams aren't getting the support that they need to sell the tickets to make the money, it's difficult to justify paying them. But if you don't pay them and it's not a professional sport, you're not going to get the support, and therefore it's never, you know, it's this catch-22. And you need to invest in these things. And you know, we've seen it in the men on the men's side. You know, when it turned pro, it takes a little bit of time. It takes some investment, and it, you know, we see it with teams that are looking to make their way into competitions like the Six Nations. You know, that they have the money. If they've got the funding, they can do it. All the debate about Italy and whether they should have been involved in, whether they should continue to be involved in the Six Nations, ultimately it comes down to cash. They have the funding, they have the support, therefore they keep their spot. But you do need to invest in these things.
Yeah, I think so. Especially when it's so successful, and it's harder for them to grow if they cut, because ultimately the showpiece of women's rugby in England will be the England women's rugby team, and because of what they've achieved, and genuinely, I mean, some of the tries, like that first try by Megan Jones, when, yes, the Spanish defence was a bit lax, she sort of ducked under one tackle, but then you saw her run. She still had work to do. She stood up the last defender. I'm not sure if it was a fullback or not, but the last defender stood her up to run round her. I mean, they're playing some really good rugby. They're running some really good lines, really good moves, and you can just tell they're a professional outfit. So I think they deserve to be treated like a professional outfit. They certainly train hard enough for it, and they certainly have achieved enough for it.
Well, we're doing our bit to try and to put the word out there and try and let the powers that be, if you're listening, you know, you need to have a bit of a rethink, because cutting the funding, it's crazy, it's counterproductive, and it's just going to mean that we don't have the opportunity to do this again. You know, if we want to be the best in the world, and you know, you've got to, as you say, you've got to treat them with the respect they deserve and the respect that they've earned from being the kind of the clinical professional outfit that they are. Yeah, and it's good rugby as well. I really sort of recommend to anyone listening who hasn't watched any of the Women's World Cup. Our next game, I believe, is Thursday versus Italy. I really recommend watching it because it plays some really good rugby. I mean, Katie McLean at 10 plays quite flat, so we're playing right on the gain line, and there's some great breaks, some great moves. We've got quality players, the like of Kay Wilson, who, fair enough, her tries, we're finishing tries rather than necessarily sort of running through teams, but she had to be there. She knew exactly where it was, and she looks like she could be a really strong player. Emily Scarrett, who was on the bench this time, but she's one of our star players, definitely, and I know scored against the All Blacks last time out. So we've got some talent out there. We really do, and it's going to be a really good World Cup. I mean, the Ireland-Australia women's game was absolute epic. And as it sort of narrows down and you've got the teams for England, New Zealand, Canada, even if they make it, Ireland, Australia or France, there's going to be some really good rugby played. And it's fun to watch. It's a joy to watch. We'll be looking forward to it, guys. Just quickly, I think, Dan, you mentioned Thursday. Thursday, there is a game. It's the USA, but actually the Italy game is tomorrow, so Sunday. It's at 2:30 p.m. Live coverage starts at 2 on ITV1. So Thursday might be difficult for a lot of you with work, but certainly no excuses not to catch them tomorrow. ITV1, 2 o'clock, perfect little afternoon of sport for you, and see what we're talking about, because as Dan says, it's well worth the watch, and I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. I think just before we round this off, because I think we've covered we're getting to that point now, aren't we? We're getting frustrated at the fact that we're hearing what they're planning to do, or rather what they're planning to not do.
Yeah.
But the game itself against Spain, it was 56-5. So as you say, a cracking win. 10 tries scored in all, which is awesome. The opener, you mentioned Megan Jones, that was scored after, I think, 1 minute, right at the very beginning of the game. Kay Wilson scored 3 in the first half, so 24-5 they went in at half time, and then another 6 scored in the second half. And it was nice because it was 1 for Emily Scarrett, 1 for Harriet Miller-Mills, 1 for Alex Matthews, 1 for Amy Cockayne, 1 for Lydia Thompson, and a 4th for Kay Wilson. So a nice mix, a lot of them getting their hands on the ball. And I think, as you mentioned, in a game like that, it starts to run away a little bit. Everyone wants to have a crack, and that's okay. That's an experience thing. But yeah, I think as the competition gets further along, and as the challenges become more difficult, we'll hopefully start to see more of the clinical aspects of the game that we've seen in the past and that we saw in the beginning of this one.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously we wish them all the best. And ladies, we'd absolutely love it if you could retain that World Cup and do us proud like you did last time round.
Yeah, we are, as they say on Twitter, #wearing the rose. We are definitely, we are firm supporters over the summer, and we'll be following obviously the games via these episodes. We'll also be on Twitter talking about them and sharing the love on there as well. So guys, thanks obviously for listening. Please continue to do so. You can download our episodes on iTunes. You can also subscribe, which means that you won't miss anything in the future. So get on there, do that. If you get an opportunity while you're there, rate us, review us, let us know what you think. Any questions, please get in touch with us on social media at England Rugby Pod across all the different platforms. You can get hold of us through the website, and you can also see what we're up to and what we have to say. That's www.englandrugbypod.com. And if you want to email us, you can do that too. It's englandrugbypod@gmail.com. Nice and easy. So, please continue to support us, and thank you so much for doing so.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Take care.